December 7th, 1971. Five bodies have been discovered in a New Jersey mansion. They've all been brutally murdered, but the husband and father is nowhere to be found. In 1987, Lost, Terry O'Quinn starred in a film revolving around a serial killer in search of the ideal American family, a man who would kill anyone who dared challenge his vision of perfection. Be careful who parent your children, because The Stepfather was inspired by a true story. Welcome to True Crime for Cinephiles. This is Inspired by a True Story, a podcast devoted to keeping artists honest. We are going to discuss the overall details of the actual crimes, and then we'll talk about the film on its own, how much of that is true and how much was Hollywood magic. Mostly it's about the true crime. I'm Aaron Peterson, an accredited film critic for the Hollywood Outsider podcast and website, and devoted true crime follower, and a father who's okay with not having a perfect American family, because that's just weird. Joining me today are my fellow film critics and true crime devotees, John Davenport.
Hey, buddy.
Amanda Sink.
Hello, hello.
And I'm very disappointed. I loved this movie as a kid. Did not know it was inspired by horrific events. Had no idea.
Yeah, it really hits a different way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a little disturbing to know that a lot of this stuff is actually worse than what Terry O'Quinn does in this movie.
But you know, there's a couple moments where I was on Terry O'Quinn's side.
Wow.
Okay, all right. Let's reel this back a little bit.
Yeah, why don't you hold those thoughts till we get there, so we don't lose too many people? But that's disturbing, and that's John at thehollywoodoutsiders.com if you really want to reach out to him.
Yeah, no, please email me. I don't use that email address for a lot. And I mean, frankly, I don't know if I know how to read. So I mean, let's just have at it.
We never do say it's inspired at thehollywoodoutsiders.com, by the way. If you ever want to send an email to us, you can at inspired at thehollywoodoutsiders.com.
Please send us emails. We want to interact and see those things and see what your thoughts are.
Says the man who, as I mentioned, is not going to read the emails.
No. I mean, one of you two are going to read it, and then you're going to give me the Cliff Notes version of it, and then I'm going to go into ChatGPT and be like, how do I feel about this? And it's going to tell me how I feel about it.
Okay, robot.
Did you know the remake? We're talking about the 80s Stepfather, right? But the remake actually starred Penn Badgley from You. Did you know that?
That never crossed my mind. That almost makes that remake good, although it's not.
Well, he's the kid in that movie. The dad is Dylan Walsh, but he is in that movie. It's basically like he is destined for serial killers, right? That movie was basically a training film, and then he goes into You, where he goes fully fledged serial killer.
Does Hollywood know something that the rest of us don't about Mr. Badgley?
Maybe. Well, this is a pretty disturbing one. So I do want to mention real quick that as of this recording, 1987's The Stepfather is streaming on Peacock. That's always subject to change, and you can also rent it. In The Stepfather, Terry O'Quinn stars as Jerry Blake, a man constantly in search of the perfect family. He claims to be a moral, upstanding, value-driven man, but there is something hiding behind his eyes. Jerry marries widows or divorcees who already have children, and as soon as his vision of perfect is lost, Jerry doesn't take time to make things better, doesn't work on discipline or maybe some strong character growth. Nope, he just straight up murders them, flees town, and starts all over again. And his newest project is Susan, and her daughter Stephanie is getting a bit too difficult to deal with. I mean, really, that just sounds like most families.
I don't even have a family, but I'm like, oh, right, that's why I don't have a family.
Because you would murder them?
Oh, pretty sure, yeah.
And flee town?
Hypothetically.
So you could do it all over again?
Hypothetically. Wow.
I'm concerned.
Just wow. Well, new episodes are released every 2 weeks and can be found wherever you listen to podcasts or at thehollywoodoutsiders.com. Please leave us a review. If you're listening to this on whatever your favorite podcast app is, whether it's Apple or Spotify or anything else, just please leave us a review. It does help the podcast, and please share these shows with your friends and fellow true crime fans. It really would help. And you can also hear episodes early by supporting the show at patreon.com/thehollywoodoutsider. Film and true crime fans alike are always debating how true their true crime is. So now we're going to discuss the vision of a perfect American family in The Stepfather.
Please be warned. Inspired by a true story, deals with crimes that may contain adult themes and violence, and is intended for a mature audience.
John Emil List was born on September 17th, 1925. He was the only child of John and Alma and was a devout Lutheran, even handling Sunday school teacher duties. In 1943, John enlisted in the Army and served during World War II. While in service, his father died. Years later, List earned a bachelor's degree in business and a master's degree in accounting. He was a hard-working, intelligent, dedicated man. When List was recalled into service during the Korean War, List met and married Helen Taylor, a widow with a daughter, Brenda. The family moved around a bit after John List left military service until he found a job in Michigan, eventually rising to supervisor of an accounting department. John's career was on the way up. Helen, it was reported, became erratic and fell into a pit of alcoholism. As time went on, their marriage became more strained. In 1960, List's stepdaughter Brenda married and moved on with her life. In 1965, List took on a position as vice president at a bank in Jersey City, New Jersey. John List was so successful, it seemed, that he purchased a Victorian mansion in Westfield. Various reports have the mansion as containing 18 rooms with marble fireplaces and even a ballroom. His mother, Alma, provided the down payment. They still attended church every Sunday. Between 1969 and 1970, Helen List was treated for brain deterioration. It turned out to be syphilis. In 1971, John List lost his job at the bank. He attempted other jobs, but nothing panned out. He began stealing money from his mother's bank accounts. He would spend his days at a local train station searching for answers, as he could not face telling his family how desperate he was. And then, he came to a solution. October 14th, 1971. John List applies for a gun permit in Westfield, New Jersey. He claims he needs the gun for home protection. Earlier in 1971, for context, John's 16-year-old daughter told her drama coach that her father threatened to kill their entire family. That, in fact, was his intent. So we come to November 9th, 1971. John List sent his children, Patricia, 16, John, 15, and Frederick, 13, off to school. Helen List was in her kitchen, drinking her morning coffee, when John List came into the room. He shot Helen in the back of the head. He then headed upstairs to where his mother, Alma, was lying in bed. He shot her in the head. Patricia and Frederick returned from school later that day. He first shot Patricia, then Frederick, both in the back of the head. John List then made a sandwich and proceeded to eat his lunch. He then went to his banks and closed out all of his accounts. His other son, John, had a high school soccer game that day. List went to the game and cheered for his son. John Jr. and his dad enjoyed the game, and then they drove home. John List Sr. then shot his son multiple times as John Jr. fought back against his monstrous father. John List Sr. then laid out sleeping bags for his family. Everyone, except for his mother. He laid each member of his family, wife Helen, sons John and Frederick, daughter Patricia, each were laid out on top of the sleeping bags. He left his mother in her upstairs bedroom undisturbed. John then took out a pen and paper from his desk. He proceeded to write a 5-page letter to his pastor. In this letter, John confessed all of his crimes in the letter, claiming that he feared for his family when confronted with a world full of evil and poverty, that they would then turn away from God. This was the only way to ensure their arrival in heaven. I don't think that's how it works. That said, John List had no intent on going to prison. John List was a coward. List cleaned up the crime scene and cut his picture from every single photo in the mansion. He canceled deliveries and made sure to call the children's schools and let them know the family would be on an extended vacation. He turned on the lights and the radio. There were hymns playing in the empty rooms. John List spent the night in that mansion with his deceased family laying sprawled out on sleeping bags. The next morning, he left Westfield for good. His car was later found at John F. Kennedy Airport, with no proof that List had actually taken a flight. It wasn't until December 7, 1971, that the bodies were discovered, almost a month later. Helen's mother was planning to visit at that time but fell ill. List later said if she had, she would have been his 6th victim. You know, to get into heaven. John List changed his name to Robert P. Clark, even getting a new Social Security card. He moved to Denver, Colorado, and began a job as a cook. Several years later, List joined a church, Lutheran again, and becomes a tax preparer for H&R Block. He met Dolores Miller at a church picnic. They dated for several years and then married in 1985. In 1988, John List, aka Robert Clark, and Dolores Clark Miller moved to Virginia. May 21st, 1989. Fox's America's Most Wanted airs a segment detailing the heinous crimes. There was a forensic artist rendition of what John List would look like now by artist Frank Bender. The picture included List's same horn-rimmed glasses, as psychiatrists theorized John would still wear these to remind himself of his more successful days. And they were right. A tip is called in from his neighbor, who said that rendition looks just like Robert Clark. And on June 1st, 1989, John List, a.k.a. Robert Clark, a.k.a. that coward who murdered his entire family, is arrested in Richmond, Virginia. Almost 18 years after the murders. He had an entire life after the fact. List does not admit his true identity until 1990. List then goes to trial and is found guilty on 5 counts of first-degree murder on April 12, 1990. A court psychiatrist found that John List suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder and that he only saw 2 ways out of his debt: welfare or murder his family and set their souls free. When asked why he did not just kill himself, he said because suicide would mean I could not get into heaven. He said, quote, "I knew it was wrong. As I was doing it, I knew it was wrong." John Emil List, known as the Boogeyman of Westfield, died of pneumonia at the age of 82 in prison on March 21st, 2008. The house where the murders occurred burned down and was later rebuilt, but the case still haunts residents of Westfield, as many will not even walk down that street.
I love the boy math here, where he says, if I killed myself, I wouldn't get into heaven. But murdering people, that'll still get you the ticket, right?
Whoa. Let's not call this boy math.
Killer math. It's not boy math.
Serial killer math?
Yeah. God.
But yeah, this is a wild case.
It's
And
disturbing, man.
it is. And I think it's also, and we've talked on previous episodes with murder, and I guess this is a common occurrence where they're just so unfazed by what they've done. Like that you're able to just go and make a sandwich.
That's the part.
hang
Yeah.
out?
Right?
Yeah.
That was the part that disturbed me the most. I'm like, hang on, I just killed a few people. I got one left. I need to make a sandwich, man. I'm
Like,
parched.
I'm hungry. Man, that was so much work.
I got to kill some time. I'm going to go ahead and make a sandwich. And then I'm going to go watch the game my son's playing in and then take him home as if nothing's wrong so that I can then
man.
do something. I mean, all of that. There's a level of premeditation in that is just nuts. You can't sit there and say that this person's insane or this person did this in the heat of the moment. All of this, especially that moment right there, is wildly planned. And it is just crazy how he went and pulled all this off.
Look, it's horrific. There's no way to get around that. It's horrific, and he's a coward. But if this were the real situation, like because minds do fracture, people do see things wrong. Schizophrenia is a real thing. All those things doesn't mean that anyone with schizophrenia would hurt anyone else, or anyone with a mental illness would hurt anyone else. 99% do not. But I pulled that percentage out of my ass, by the way, so please don't quote me. That's incorrect. But the idea that he took no ownership at that point, he disappeared for 18 years. I just don't buy any aspect that he actually believed that. I don't care what the psychiatrist said. There's no part of me that can believe that, because if you truly, I grew up in a religious family, right? Very, very devout. They are dedicated to their religion for better and worse. There's pluses and minuses to everything. If you really believe that, then why didn't you turn yourself in? Writing a letter to your pastor and then disappearing and starting a new life and pretending like that life didn't matter is not godly in any way, shape, or form. I just can't believe anything this guy's said.
He said he was wrong. Like, he admitted to being wrong, and he said he was wrong while he did it. So if he knew he was wrong, then how could you consider those actions, quote unquote, godly?
And he said he was wrong after he got caught. Well, I mean, I guess he wrote a confession, so he admitted at that point that was wrong. But he still disappeared because he didn't want to go to prison. It had nothing to do with God.
Yeah, he wrote the confession so that he can use that as his way to hide his tracks,
More premeditation, where he's thinking through it. He had enough time to say, I need to sit down and write this out so I can give myself a level of protection if this comes up.
Right. So he wrote this all out. He went ahead and went to the airport, left his car there, and then went off and had another life. He was lucky that he did this in the time frame that he did this, which was the 70s, which is what was prime time for just about any serial killer or any person.
Seems like it. It really sounds like there was some kind of course or something being taught in some school during the 70s.
Yeah, I think it's the lead paint or something, but it was the prime era for these people to be able to do these things, because anybody could have just gotten away with stuff like this. Nowadays, you sneeze the wrong way and people are showing up going, "Hey, did you do this? No. How did you? Oh, why am I already in handcuffs? I only just thought about doing it and I'm out of here." So, it's an interesting era, especially when you look at all the different things that are going on as far as murder and serial killers during that time. He was able to just leave his car someplace, not even prove that he's on an airplane, but they had no idea what else to do with it because they didn't have the technology. They couldn't rebuild them.
It's interesting that he left his mother alone. He didn't disturb his mother. He brought everybody else down and collected them, basically, put them on sleeping bags, spent the night with them one more time. Mm-hmm. But his mother, he left undisturbed in her bed because he didn't, I guess, want to disturb her body. That's it's almost, I dare say, I don't want to say thoughtful, but that is an interesting mindset that this lunatic had.
Well, that's the only one he felt guilty about, obviously.
That's how I would take it. Yeah, that's how I would take it.
Say what you will about crazy people. They love their moms.
Just ask Norman Bates.
Right.
Fictional character. Fictional character.
So one thing that I noticed about this story is that he killed his family and started a new family, and fortunately did not like go family to family, killing them over and over again. This was a one-time thing.
Is that a surprise? I feel like that should be a surprise, that you could kill that many people and then not do it again.
Yeah, I'm absolutely surprised by it because of the heartlessness in which he did something like this. I mean, he went from his, in theoretically speaking, you have the strongest bond to that first marriage. You have the strongest bond to the children that you fathered, and then you have the strongest bond to your mother, obviously, shown by his actions when it came to his mother. So when it came to his second marriage and the second set of kids, was it just a better family altogether? Or did he just accept the fact that he wasn't making the kind of money he used to make, but he was okay with how comfortable they were?
I feel like that's an important aspect. The mindset of people. There's still people that feel this way, right? If I get to a certain level of wealth and I lose it, there's nothing else for me. Like they see that as dire. And I don't know if it's different. I grew up poor, so if I lost everything, I feel like I would be fine. I would just work back to it. I just feel like that's my mentality, and everybody has a different mentality. But I do think there was this, and it's not a defense. Please do not take that as any kind of defense. But I do think there is a stigma, or was a stigma for sure, that if a man can't provide for his family during that time, he is a loser. He has failed. And to some degree, I'm not saying that that's some kind of justification. I'm just saying I at least can see why he saw it that way at the time, but he's straight up still a murderer, a lunatic, a psychopath.
Did you say that when he bought his first house, that mansion, he bought that with his mother?
His mother's down payment, but he was making good money at the time.
Right. Did he come from money is essentially going to be the question.
The fact that his mother offered the down payment shows that there was some money in the family, and he's obviously trying to live above his means.
Right.
That, on a counter argument, is his own doing. He became a victim of his own doing. He tried to place himself higher in status than he probably should have because he couldn't afford these elements. Even, if you lose your job and you lose your house, if you're going to lose your house shortly thereafter, you're financially unstable. You should not be in that particular house. You should buy something more affordable. It should be like 40%. Your mortgage payment should be at least 40 to 35% or whatever of your pay. And you go over that, and then you're going to lose everything very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if this was one of those situations where he grew up thinking he was more well off than he actually was, and then just kept going on that trajectory until that was lost to him, until it was just nowhere to go, and he just couldn't see himself doing anything else or finding a way into rebuilding that, which is sad because that's what we all go through periods in which we're not making the kind of money we want to be making or we need to be making. And we all go through periods where we lose a job, and we all go through periods in which our family is at risk, but we don't go around killing them.
No, nor do we make a sandwich in between.
Well, I understand the sandwich.
Okay. Now you're just being weird. Like, hey, I'm parched. I'm tired. It's been a long day. Da-da-da. The guy wakes up, has an entire plan. His wife is trying to just drink coffee, shoots her in the back of the head. He goes and kills his mom. Then he does his kids, waits for them to come home from school. Doesn't even do it on a weekend. Makes the kids go to school. Like, that's punishment, additional punishment. I don't appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, goes and roots for his son in a game and then comes home and kills him. And it sounds like his son fought with him. It's just like all of these things just make him a monster, like an absolute monster. And the thing that fascinates me most about this is then the fact that he had these 18 years where he had this new life and revitalized and seemed to be fine mentally and doesn't do anything horrible again. I just don't understand.
That we know of.
That we know of, sure. But I mean, man, you've got a psychiatric background. Don't you think that's surprising in some way? That feels surprising.
I mean, it is surprising for sure, because we would expect with him killing that many people that he would, get, I guess, like a taste for it and then continue on. He clearly, it wasn't all an act of impulsivity because he was able to take moments between and go back to it. It was like it was work like a job. Like, oh, it's time for my lunch break and then I'll go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely, it's surprising and it's shocking that he was able to, I guess, change and adjust something within himself, as far as we know. But I still wouldn't rule out the possibility that he did do additional harm that we're not aware of.
That's fair. Because he was that good at hiding it. He knew how to hide it.
Yeah, and I really feel like, I mean, it's very rare that someone doesn't continue or have what they consider urges after they've been so violent in the past, especially to go 18 years. It's like going cold turkey on murder. It's weird. But I think the other part of it too, to John's point, what he was talking about is the time period that this is all occurring. It's not even just a matter of how much wealth someone has and then being able to manage their money and all of that. It's also, if you're the provider for the family, people depend on you. You lose your job. And at that time, when you were expected as a man to hold your job, hold down the household for the family, you don't do that. And it's humiliation. It's embarrassment. It takes a hit at your ego. I think he's more prideful and egotistical than there's really been enough light shed on, because I think that's where all of the fascination and obsession with wealth comes from, is from a level of ego. You know, how do people see me? So I kind of feel like for him, it was a result of his ego becoming fractured and him being unable to manage and cope with him being a disappointment in to his family from his perspective, because he was no longer the provider. And if you're a man in the 70s and you're not a provider, then what are you? Not me. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's kind of the mentality that especially I think women had at that time. That was your expectation. That was your role in life.
To me, it also speaks to the fact that in his mind, he had several people he wanted to blame for where he was. And once he punished those people that he had to blame for where he was, then he was done, because then he was able to start over, because he just didn't have that weight around his neck anymore.
Well, I mean, I guess I can see that mentality. I don't know so much as blame them for it. I feel like he murdered them out of his own textbook narcissism. Them looking at him made him feel like a failure, because he felt like a failure, because he was a failure in respect to the time. That's what I would say. I don't know. Yeah, that's the way I would see it, I guess. Now, how about this? Taking a step away from the murderer, from the coward, from the POS who did this to a family who loved him and treasured him and probably looked up to him, probably admired him. They probably told other family members, even though the daughter said, my dad said he was going to kill the entire family, I'm sure they all loved each other to varying degrees, right? It's a family. Families are dysfunctional. Now, how about John Walsh? How about that guy? Now, that's a father I can admire.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a guy, if you don't know who John Walsh is, he's the host of America's Most Wanted, which is still going on. I think he's got his son with him now doing another version of it. This guy turned tragedy into miracles in a lot of respects. You know, he turned losing his son into hosting this show, America's Most Wanted, and caught a ton of criminals that otherwise would probably still be on the lam, as they say. Mm-hmm. And that is just something that I don't think gets appreciated and acknowledged enough. I realize, he was just the host of the show, but because of his personality, because of his personal plight, because of his activism and incessant belief that we need to keep going after people, even if it's been 10 years, 20 years, 18 years, we need to keep going after him. Because of his continued resolve, we caught John List. That
is one of the things that I really appreciate about some media when it comes to this sort of thing, especially somebody like John Walsh. Again, you said you hit the nail on the head with him. If it wasn't for the fact that he was able to pick himself up after a family tragedy and decide that this wasn't going to happen to another family, especially with the same criminals that are running around getting free, if it wasn't for the fact that he made that decision and moved forward and didn't let one tragedy become the marker for where he can call his life, he decided to take that and build it into something so much bigger and better, and that affected humanity in a better way. I mean, that's incredible.
I can't tell you how much I admire that guy. That guy, his son Adam Walsh was I think he was 6, if I remember right. He was a 6-year-old boy, and he was kidnapped, and he was reported missing, and they found him, and I think they attributed it to a serial killer later, but all they ever found was this boy's head. And he still managed to turn that into a positive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I can't, as a dad,
couldn't
man.
be me.
What's that?
I said it couldn't be me.
Well, it's amazing what happens to some people under a tragedy. You know, after a tragedy, some people react different ways. John List creates a tragedy, bolts off, and starts another life. John Walsh actually takes that and makes it something meaningful because he doesn't want his son to die in vain. And, you know, you can say whatever you want. Like, I don't know. Some people always downplay that because, well, he made money off this. He saved a lot of people's lives. His show helped find people that otherwise probably wouldn't have been found. John List wouldn't have been found without this show. Wouldn't have. He was doing fine. Didn't need any help from anyone else to catch him. Like, this show is what caught him.
Yeah, I don't care about the fact that he made money. That doesn't bother me one bit.
I don't care either.
Yeah, let him make whatever kind of money he's making doing that show. He deserves it. He deserves the effort for the effort that he's putting in. Like, anyone who wants to say that, oh well, it's not really he's not really doing anything great because he's getting paid for it, you're a crazy person.
All of us true crime fans owe him a debt, because a lot of what you see that is true crime now, especially, you know, you see some Serial and things like that, those occur in the same vein as like America's Most Wanted. You know, they're basically after a truth of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more than just reporting on things. They're trying to put facts in internet detectives' hands so that maybe this case can be solved, like a cold case can be solved, those sorts of things. It's putting it in the public's hands, and that wasn't really done until that show came along. I just think it's important to acknowledge that, because love you, John Walsh. He's done a lot of great things, man.
Yeah, he really has.
Good impact.
All right. Any other thoughts on John Emil Coward List? That's what I'm going to call him.
I like that. Adjustment to his legal name.
You know, by all means, Aaron, why don't you just start talking about all your feelings?
I'm sorry. It's just like this whole concept. It just boils my blood. It really, really does. As a dad, as a family man, the perfect American family is impossible. They support you even when you fail. You just have to let them. And this idea that this is the only way that they can get into heaven, to use God as an excuse for your horrific actions makes me sicker than the whole act itself.
Right.
I hate it when people sit there and try to hide behind the cross or the Bible or whatever and say, this is why I get to do horrific things. And no.
Messed up. But the movie
is also messed up.
It is also messed up. And until recently, really liked it. Now I'm concerned about my enjoyment of it. But I will say, in terms of before we get into the truth and not truth. So as a standalone film, I assume you guys didn't really know much about the true case behind this?
Not initially, no.
So what did you think about the movie? I'm curious about Amanda, because I don't think you had ever seen this, right? And you're not a child of the 80s like John and I. You might see this movie differently than we probably did.
No, I mean, I love 80s movies. So I recognize the very 80s moments, like the score. The score was very 80s. But yeah, I had no idea, went into it completely blind. I prefer to watch the movie and then learn the story if I don't know it already, do the real story after. Because otherwise I just sit in a comparative state the entire time and it's not enjoyable for me.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the way I tend to do it. And then I read up on the story pretty much immediately after, so that way I can compare and contrast after I've already seen it. But I love Terry O'Quinn. I mean, I think he was phenomenal because he had this dynamic of really seeming like a great guy and seeming really nice. And then you see how deplorable he is as a human being. And I think one of the most impactful moments of like the murder scenes for me is, I think it might be at the beginning of the movie, if I remember right, but it's the scene where after everybody has been murdered, he's like walking and he's about ready to leave to go to his kid. And I'm like, hold on a second. This man seems completely unbothered by the fact that he's surrounded by blood, that there's all this going on.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was like a prime example of the coldness of this real life killer, that he was unbothered. He had no remorse. He had no real effect by any of it. I'm still trying to figure out how what's-her-face thought that, hitting the gun multiple times was going to make more bullets appear. But otherwise, the movie was
say that again? Explain that again?
The mom, or not the mom, but when she's they're on the staircase and he's trying to stab the daughter.
Jill Schoelen, Stephanie,
mm-hmm.
the daughter, yeah.
And she like shoots a couple times and then she realizes she's out of bullets and she's like, oh my gosh, no, get the knife. And so all this chaos is happening. And all she does is she keeps like hitting the gun with her other hand. Like, come on, shake it up. Like if you go rewatch the scene, she does it in the background, like repeatedly the entire time he's crawling up the stairs. And I'm like, honey, this isn't how bullets get in the gun. Like, get up, hit him with the gun. What are we doing here? It's kind of ridiculous, but it was very 80s.
And John, what are your thoughts on The Stepfather?
I enjoyed the movie the first time when I watched it, God knows when, but this time around I enjoyed it knowing a little bit of the story. There's a couple times where I identified with Terry O'Quinn's character, especially the moment when he's got everybody over at the house and then he's got that party going on and the stepdaughter's downstairs getting ice cream or something out of the freezer downstairs. And he comes downstairs and starts like having this whole conniption fit and yelling about how he wants to kill everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And is just stressed out because he's got this entire time upstairs where he's being the man of the hour and he's talking about all these things and he's being such a family guy and it's just wearing on him because he's holding up this mask this entire time. And that scene really just struck me because I'm like, there's been so many times where I've had people over or I've been around too many people for too long where I'm like, I'm going to go to the restroom and I just sit in the restroom for a minute or two just to center myself after being around.
Yeah, I think that part's fair. The maniacal slaughterhouse part, probably not so much, but
oh no, I mean
just needing to get out of the area, vent, reflect on the fact that I just need to clear my head because I'm tired of putting on this fake face. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Like all of that is, I identify way too much with a lot of that whole putting on the fake face bit. The rest of the movie, it was good. The murder that struck me the most was when he kills the therapist.
Why did that one strike you the most?
Because it was just, the guy's just trying to figure out how to help this stepdaughter of his.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure, he lies about who he is, and Jerry has no idea that he's a therapist, and he actually thinks the whole time he's a cop questioning him.
Mm-hmm.
And once he finally, figures it all out, he still feels like he's well within his right to have done what he did because the guy was asking too many questions and unraveling his life. But the whole brutality of that kill was, for the time, incredible. You don't see exactly the hit to the face because that's off camera. The way Terry O'Quinn plays that moment was just awesome.
Yeah, so here, I'll set the stage for you a little bit. I saw this movie in the theater. It was very limited release. I remember, I think I knew about it because of Fangoria magazine or something at the time. Basically, new slasher movies coming out. I'm like, what? And saw the ad in the paper and convinced my mom to drop me off so I could go see this one. Because back in those days, I didn't need my mom to go in. They just let me in. And the one thing that has stuck with me over all the years, and I saw it when it hit video and stuff, but I haven't seen it in a long time. But the one thing that always stuck with me about this movie is Jill Schoelen is she was kind of like a scream queen of sorts at the time. She was in Cutting Class and a couple other horror movies and stuff. And for whatever reason, I liked her because she just seemed like a real American Girl kind of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And I liked the therapist. I really, I thought the acting was strong. I really appreciated Shelley Hack as Susan because I felt like she was a real mom who had a real relationship, and you understood these two and their conflicts. The thing that always stood out with me, it's never not stood out with me. And once he got cast as John Locke in Lost, I'm like, I love that. I love that actor. Mm-hmm. He was so good. Like he is such a good actor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't think he ever really has gotten, even on Lost, I don't think he's ever really gotten the credit he deserved. But this is such a B movie genre role, thankless role, right? This is something that shouldn't be memorable. It could, look at the remake. Dylan Walsh did it and nobody remembers it, right?
Right.
He's that good. They made a sequel. It wasn't as good. He was still very good in it, but he is such a good actor that he made this character understandable. And I think that's very hard to do with any kind of serial killer role. It's very, very hard to, I don't want to say empathize, but understand the mindset behind the person engaging in the action, right? Doing the horrific act. Very, very hard to at least understand that mentality. And I think he brings that across. He elevates the writing for sure in my mind. And it's always been a role that stuck with me because it's one of those things where the movie's good. He's great. And I don't know if he ever really will get the credit he deserves for that.
Yeah, he's wildly underappreciated. Like his whole face is a study in acting in every single moment of this movie. And it's not something that you see very often, but he's not necessarily using a lot of words or he actually reacts to what's happening around him. It's just amazing the whole time you're watching it. I don't get why he's never really been that big of an actor. The little nuance that he adds to this character was just beautifully done.
Now, do you guys think that this feels more like a slasher film than a true crime film, I guess, if you will?
Totally. I never felt like I really got the impression or the understanding to the degree that I do now, obviously, that this was truly inspired by a real story. You know what I mean? It felt like we were just watching a horror movie and on a topic that I swear to gosh, I'm trying not to swear, especially on this episode. I want to make it into heaven too. But
nice.
But for me, I don't even remember what the hell I was going to say. I don't even know where I was going.
You were trying to go to heaven.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
The slasher mechanics of this whole idea. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah. I just, for me, it really did not feel, it felt like we were just getting this side story. This is one of my biggest fears, truly, is getting invested in like a family and then that person, you have no idea who they are and then they turn out to be this crazy killer. And even worse, they murder you and your entire family. Like, whoo, that's rough. And so to find out that this is real, bummer. To like go watch this movie and, if you haven't seen it before and you go in and you watch it and after listening to this podcast, everything that the real, John List did, watch it and figure out if you're ever going to trust anybody ever again is kind of how I feel. Because this is like a true, it's very much like a true horror when you think about the content and the action behind everything here and the story. If you were to just watch it, it just looks like a horror movie. It just looks like, this guy kind of lost it. He had whatever he had going on and, you just don't know people. But it's even worse.
To me, this is much more of a thriller suspense kind of movie, not necessarily a slasher flick. It's more in the same vein of Sleeping with the Enemy or...
Oh, it's the same director, Joseph Rubin.
I'm really good. So again, Sleeping with the Enemy, or it's in the same vein of Hand That Rocks the Cradle or Single White Female. You see the scary, and then it builds up into something even more scary as time rolls on. Much less of a slasher film to me, because that's usually to me where you've got someone who's actively running through and killing absolutely everybody they can. This is more grounded in reality to a degree.
Slow down on the reality kick.
I said to a degree.
You did say You did say to a degree. You know what I find most terrifying about, well, not most, but one thing I do find terrifying about this movie is the fear is real. Like Stephanie, the young girl in the film, those fears, if you've ever had a step parent, those fears are real. Like that's a real concern that people have. You always assume the worst of I feel like I've been in that situation, and you kind of look at it like they have to prove themselves to you or you don't trust them until they do. And they're always trying too hard because they're definitely, they typically want that relationship. They want to build a relationship. The kid's usually a little resistant because they feel like they already have a parent. They don't need this extra parent. It's a really interesting dynamic. And I think they do play with that well here, to where sometimes when she has her concerns, we know he's bad, but she shouldn't be on that yet. And so you can look at it from, well, you're kind of being an ass, even though you know she's right. She still doesn't have the information yet. So, she's kind of being an ass to him, and he hasn't done anything to her at that point.
That's the tough part. You almost want to be on his side. If you didn't know he was a killer, you'd be on his side the whole time up until it starts getting really weird because, yeah, she's being a kid and she's being an asshole the whole time.
I don't know about the whole time. I mean, the freak out in the basement, while I understand it, was a big freak out. That would make me go, I kind of want to follow this guy for a while. See what's up.
I still love that moment.
My last important question, I think this is important. Is there even such a thing as a perfect family? I think that's such a silly mindset, but a lot of people have it.
I mean, there is such a thing in a perfect family, and it lies in imperfectness.
Okay. Go ahead. Rock my brain.
Okay, so everyone's idea of a perfect family, there's no creativity in it. There's no actual love in it. There's no anything you want to put in, you want to call the idea of what a perfect family is. You have none of the great mixtures that create an actual loving and caring environment where people are bonded and people understand each other and people want to be together. In an imperfect family, you go through hard times. You rebond. You start building up building blocks to create this life with a collection of people who are all different and the same to some degree. And yet there are going to be times where you're going to have challenges and have headbutting and have all those moments. But that's part of life, and that's part of what making connections is all about. Coming to points where you have to have agreements. You love your family, not for the great things of who they are, but you love them for their faults.
Yeah, I think there is such a thing as a perfect family, but it is going to have imperfections, and it's going to look different to every person. What one person considers to be a perfect family is different for another. Someone could say, for me, a perfect family is having my significant other and my dog, and that's it. For other people, it's like, I need 8 kids, 4 wives, 13 sheepdogs,
4 wives,
and 2
Jesus.
Frogs. Yeah,
Hey, wow,
nobody needs that.
2 frogs?
I don't know.
That's a weird
the
dynamic.
frogs I understand. 4 wives I'll never figure out.
That's so
That's a lot of work. Honestly, it sounds like too much work. But if you like to
disappointing.
suffer,
4 people all at once, man.
Exactly.
I can't do that.
John was going to
weird.
say, I already disappoint enough. That's funny.
Yeah, it was.
But I really do think that there is a way for you to feel like you have the life that you envisioned, the perfect family. And it doesn't mean that those people are perfect. It doesn't mean that the situations are perfect, but it's enough to make you happy and say, this is what I wanted and this is what I have. And to you, that is perfection.
Got nothing to add to that. I come from a dysfunctional family. I have a dysfunctional family. I'm okay. I don't think there's such a thing as perfect family. I don't need it.
You are the dysfunctional family.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't need perfection. I've never understood that need for everyone to be beholden to your vision. Because I'll be perfectly honest, I don't want my kids or anyone to really feel the same way I do about everything. I'm good if we're connected, but I also want them to think outside the box. I want them to see color outside the lines. I want them to have a vision bigger than my own. That sort of thing. I don't want them to be limited by my own personal perception of what a life should be. And I think that's perfect to me. As if you can raise your kids to feel that way. If your wife feels that way, or husband feels that way, or what, your spouse, whatever you do, that to me is a perfect family. Just people that are loving, they're together, but they also have their own visions of what they want. And everybody else can be understanding of that. Now, what the movie got right, and did it respect the victims? I will say it didn't try to be a true crime thriller of any sort. It is definitely, it's a jumping off point, John List story. It's a taking the idea and saying, okay, let's make a typical 80s slasher / thriller film out of it. So I don't think it disrespected the victims, but I will say once you hear the whole story, it does make the movie feel a little cheaper, if that makes sense.
It does. And I would say for me, the biggest thing is your conclusion is not going to be accurate to what really happened. You know what I mean? Like we miss a lot of that information and those details in here. But like you mentioned, it never came across, and this is what I was saying earlier, never came across to me like they were trying to tell this story accurately. It was more of, okay, this is a really crazy case. Let's build on it and make it Hollywood, make it a movie.
Yeah, I agree with both those sentiments. And if I sit here and try to think about how would I build off of this movie and make it better and or make it more to the story, I don't see what the purpose would be, because essentially the purpose would be you may have to make changes to the original story to make it something that's watchable. If you just do the murder, then you're creating a slasher flick for sure. You would have to make that span over the several hours of film, or an hour and a half long film to just cover the murder part of it. But if you're going to get the whole story, you're going to want to get the conception of the murder, the execution of the plan, and then the continued execution of the plan over 18 years. And then it's, okay, well, now we have to make this better by adding a cop chase or something to that effect. So we have to add more to the story than we actually got. So there's no suspense to the idea of whether or not he got caught. So I like this story as far as being like, hey, this is inspired by the John List story, but then adding more to it. I'm okay with that.
I do feel like there is one thing in terms of the victims. I do think that there's a certain amount of respect paid to Dolores by how Susan is portrayed, because the mother in the film, because she's duped. She has no idea. But as soon as she understands, even a little bit, she is on her daughter's side. You know what I mean? I felt like, when you look back at the true crime and how this, this woman didn't know that, because I'm sure at the time people, because I know how the world is, and I've read several articles that she had a very, very hard time because people, how did you not know? How did you not know? How did you not know? Did you know? How did you not know? I don't know ultimately if she ever knew or didn't know. I just know that has got to be an insurmountable situation to face, to find out that your husband murdered his entire family years ago.
Damn, I'm out here trying to make sure you don't lie to me about what your favorite food is. Meanwhile, this woman's she's like, my man has a whole other life.
Very concerning too, right? Like, just very, very concerning. I don't know how do you overcome it? Put yourselves in those shoes.
I would never, ever, I'm telling you this right the hell now, you two. I would never recover. I would never, ever, ever recover. I already have trust issues. The fact that you had a whole ass life, you had a whole other identity, you murdered people, you murdered your family. Like, nah, I will never, ever, ever, ever trust you. I'm never trusting nobody. I'm sleeping with a knife. I'm sleeping with a gun. And
why did you
what?
lose all sense of proper English in that whole?
Yeah, I don't.
You know what?
I don't know what happened there.
I'm feeling a little unsafe right now.
So you stress out and your vernacular devolves. That's what you're saying. Okay,
absolutely, 100%. I tap into my roots, I guess. But no, I would not. I would never. I don't know how somebody could be okay ever again.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
Especially when people keep on going, how did you not know? It's like, dude, the guy is a freaking narcissist. Narcissists are really good at what they do.
Yeah, and they don't see anything wrong.
No.
until they're caught. Then, of course, oh, no. I
Well,
knew it was
no,
wrong.
even then it's not. They don't see anything wrong with it. They come up with because God told me to, or because they looked at me the wrong way, and I should have all the right in the world to do something, or like this fly landed on the countertop and that just set me off. Like any of those reasons and none of them are true. They're just what happened in front of them at that moment to be able to say like I did this.
You know what? If a fly landed on the countertop right now in front of me, I would probably react strongly. So I can say I get that one.
Okay.
Only if it looked like Jeff Goldblum would I be concerned.
Do you mean it would be a fly with Jeff Goldblum's head, or a fly with Jeff Goldblum's body but a regular fly head?
I don't know, but this is what's called ruining a joke.
Well done. Well done, John.
Well done. Way to kill it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Should we not make jokes that say way to kill it?
Sorry.
Woo!
Ooh, you got
Ooh,
me.
you know what? That's going to be our t-shirt from now on. It's going to be IBATS, way to kill it.
Stop. People would probably buy that, though.
I kind of want to buy that. All right. Well, what would you have done differently, if anything? And the only thing I would think I would do differently is I wouldn't do this movie any different. And, I like the way that this is set up, and it is a very, very cool, like, slasher thriller combo. Joseph Rubin is a good director. Yeah, he did The Good Son, too. If you ever saw that, that's a good film, too. I like those kinds of lowbrow thrillers. Mm-hmm. But I would like to see the story told, whether it be in a limited series or in a film, but told with more reverence for the for the people who lost their lives, because I feel like so much of the focus in media and whatnot is on John List. There's hardly anything about those people he killed. And I think those people deserve a face.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I would also, if we were doing it now, I'm updating the score. It's good for the 80s, but times are different, my guy.
Oh, yeah, the score is a little cheesy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, only a little bit.
That like shrieking violin when something bad is about to happen. I'm like, dear Lord.
Hey, we need to know.
Woo.
Horror movies need to tell us exactly when the moment's going to happen, so we're not concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They need some sort of or.
Oh man, if you would have just grabbed, if you would have threw on a hockey mask at some point, that could have been amazing.
Yeah, that would have been great. We're getting sued by somebody.
Also, The Good Son is a crazy movie. I saw that for the first time last year.
Really? Did you like it?
I did. Yeah.
That was inspired by a true story.
It was a good. It was a
I
good
don't know
movie.
if that's true or not.
It.
I'm just making that up.
I think it is, though, isn't it?
I mean, I've known kids where, I could see it. So probably.
Regardless, it's somebody's true story.
Yeah, it's definitely someone's true story. Yes. John, what would you have done differently? Anything?
No, I don't think I would have done anything differently on this one, because I don't need it to show reverence to who was actually killed. I think it serves pretty well as a way to create tension in a family, or at least create a good amount of tension in the story that it is. But I don't need the reference paid to the original family. I think they did a good job, like showing that what he did without showing what he did, without being grotesque or way too involved with it, or showing all the bodies everywhere as in deep detail and stopping the camera. Like, I think just by the amount of blood that they showed and the hints here and there, that was a better way to show reverence to the family that he killed than anything else could have done. So I'm okay with the way they handled it.
All right. Well, we can agree on one thing. John Walsh is an amazing man. John List is a cowardly bastard. And if you enjoyed this podcast, share the show on our social media and give us a review in your favorite podcast app. You are always the best source of promotion. So please tell your true crime fans and friends about it. We really do appreciate if you could tell people about the show so they can find it, listen to it, and hopefully they enjoy it and leave us a review too. That would be great. Thanks for listening to Inspired by a True Story. Now, let's keep those artists honest. Ma. Kill.
Way to kill it.
Shut your
Way to kill it.
mouth. You working on that t-shirt yet?
I have tempted to load up the software for it.